Did you know? Cloud's trademark Buster Sword was originally planned to appear in Final Fantasy X and was going to be an equipable weapon for Tidus. The sword is still in the game's code and can be put back into the game by hacking. When Tidus swings the sword, he attacks with the blunt side of the sword, similar to Angel Healui and Zack Fair, the previous owners of the sword before Cloud. There's also a fairly unknown detail about Cloud's use of the Buster Sword. Some design documents show that the brace between the 3 straps on his back is also a magnet that keeps the sword in place. Design documents also reveal that Cloud's hair was originally going to be slicked back and black rather than spiky and blonde. This was meant to show a contrast between Cloud and Final Fantasy VII antagonist Sephiroth, whose hair was bright silver and flowing. This slicked back look was also planned to reduce the amount of polygons in Cloud's model, as the developers were uncertain about the power of the upcoming 3D consoles. This unused design for Cloud appears to have inspired Zack Fair's design. Zack has multiple connections with Cloud, and was one of the last characters in the game to be designed by Tetsuya Nomura. Similar changes happened to Final Fantasy X's Tidus. Beta footage of the game shows Tidus with black hair. Tidus' hair was changed to blonde, and it's thought this was to give him a stronger connection with the sun. Tidus and Yuna were named after the sun and moon respectively, so this would help emphasize the theme even more. Tidus was also planned to be undead at one point in development. This was changed due to a similar concept being used in the 1999 movie The Sixth Sense, where the lead character was revealed to be a ghost. Although Final Fantasy games usually stand on their own and each game has an unconnected story, the worlds of Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy X actually take place in the same universe and on the same timeline. In Final Fantasy X-2, the characters Shinra and Rin discuss the potential of using the Far Plane, which is essentially a resting place for the dead, as an energy source. Shinra then speculates that the technology needed to refine the Far Plane's energy wouldn't exist for many years. In the Final Fantasy X-2 Ultimania guide, series writer Kazushige Nojima stated that Rin would later fund Shinra's efforts to refine energy from the Far Plane, but the experiments failed. Shinra's descendants would then travel to Final Fantasy VII's planet, Gaia, 1,000 years after the events of Final Fantasy X-2, when space travel was possible. They would go on to found the Shinra Electric Power Company, and set in motion the events leading up to Final Fantasy VII. Kefka Palazzo's iconic laugh featured in Final Fantasy VI can be found in Final Fantasy VII. If the player goes to the Ghost Square at the Gold Saucer and interacts with the Green Pumpkin, a slightly altered version of Kefka's laugh will play. This modified Kefka laugh can also be heard after Tifa and Cloud fall into the life stream at Mideel. Kefka's laugh also makes an appearance in one of Square's other games, Chrono Trigger. The laugh will play when the player talks to Nolstein Beckler at the Millennial Fair, and can also be heard from Magus' henchman, Ozzy. Early on in Final Fantasy VII's story, there's a soapland called Honeybee Inn. The final version of the game displays some fairly suggestive sexual content in the Honeybee Inn, but the original version was even more explicit. There are unused parts of the inn that can only be found in the original Japanese version's game data. This unused content includes Aeris accusing Cloud of going into the inn for pleasure rather than helping Tifa, and finding out that Palmer, the head of Shinra's space exploration department, frequently visits the inn. There's a lobby not seen in the final game where a menu is displayed on a screen showing courses with girls of either 30 or 150 minutes in length. The lobby also has a sign on display that forbids entry to other brothel owners, talent scouts, and children. On the second floor of the inn, Cloud can peek into customer rooms through the keyholes. He'll say, "Wow." Then a message will display saying, "We apologize, but the following contains material unsuitable for the general public." In the waiting room, you can talk to a man who gives you what he believes to be Tifa's underwear. He claims they're the real thing, explaining that he took them from the clothesline behind Tifa's shop in 7th Heaven. Inspecting these mystery panties states that they have a childish design, suggesting they aren't Tifa's, but Marlene's. Marlene is the young adopted daughter of Barrett, and is looked after by Tifa. While we're on the subject of the Honeybee Inn, in the final version of the game, if you look into one of the occupied rooms through a keyhole, you can actually see a mini Kate Sith inside, jumping up and down in a bathtub. Another one of Final Fantasy VII's secrets went unknown for about 8 years. This secret is that the inscription on Jenova's helmet is a reference to the real world, and reads, "Made in Hong Kong, all rights reserved 1996, Square Company Limited." The secret went unknown because the low resolution the game was displayed in made the inscription difficult to read. It wasn't until a higher resolution image was shown in a Final Fantasy Advent Children featurette that the text was clear and readable. That's all for today, but don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Make sure you also check out DidYouKnowGaming.com, where we post gaming trivia every single day. If you like this video, check out some of our other videos. And if you're in the mood for some more Final Fantasy, you can check out this ProJared guy talk about Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. You remember that game? Right down there. Just gotta click it.